Monday. It's time for Bagels and Business for Breakfast. Good morning, Yvonne. It's Sharon Taylor, founder and CEO of the Business Vision and Development Center, and we're on Bagels and Business for Breakfast. How you doing, Yvonne?
All is well, Sharon. I'm doing great. Happy to be here to share some great information with our viewers today, early this morning.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're both here this morning. And we are into the managing phase of our business. You know, we did business formation, went through those 10 steps. Then we did plan, launch, and now we're into manage our business. And part of the one of the steps in managing our business is staying legally compliant. A lot of times in business, we get so consumed in doing the business that we don't handle the administrative side of the business and let our things that we need to be compliant with fall through the cracks, which ultimately jeopardizes our business license. So let's talk about some internal requirements. And I'm going to speak to for profit. And if you would, I'd appreciate it if you speak to the nonprofit. So I'll take a first stab at internal requirements, and they may be similar for nonprofits. But when it comes to your internal requirements, you're like, okay, what does that mean? You need to know how your products or services should function. You should have a written document so that whomever is assisting you or yourself or an investor, they know the flow of your products and service. They also should know how they work. If you say you got a skin cream that gets rid of blemishes, that should be written somewhere in terms of how it's done so that you can stay in compliance. Did it need FDA approval? Do you got patent and trade? Those kind of things when it comes to internal requirements, when you have functional requirements for product and service. Does nonprofit have something similar in terms of, because nonprofits also have products and services too, correct?
Yes, they can, Sharon, depending on how they're actually set up and what their purpose is as a charitable organization. But pretty much with the nonprofit, they need the same internal to make sure that they have completed that type of information as well, because you need to be very clear about what it is that you're doing. So it should be documented. Sometime I think maybe in the operating agreement, even having that in place would be helpful and important.
Thank you, Yvonne, because that brings me to the operational requirements. When you said the operation agreement, and when I think of that, it makes me think of org charts and how different divisions or subsets of your business operate. Are you having the person that does your finances over here doing administrative work and HR work? There should be a clear line about your operational requirements, especially if you're going to hire employees. They should know what the chain of command is, what the business structure is, and where they fit into the entire organization.
Yes, Sharon, it is a little different for our viewers to think about with the nonprofits because you definitely have to have a board of directors in place when you have a nonprofit. So you need to have your officers in place, and you can have members, especially when you're just getting started. But also may include having your committees in place, knowing who your executive director is going to be, because your executive director is the one doing the daily operations for sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
because the executive director on a nonprofit is sort of like the chief executive officer for profit, the person that handles the daily, or the coup chief operating officer who handles the daily responsibilities of the business.
Yeah,
Similar jobs, but different titles.
exactly. So the CEO of the nonprofit, with the nonprofits, they not as cut dry as the for profit because most time nonprofits starting they wearing more than one hat, to be honest. So you might be the CEO and the treasurer when you first start, but you might be the president. And some people do set up, they're the CEO and the president of the board.
Okay.
So yeah, so it just depends on how they're set up according to the bylaws.
Okay, and but that's also important that your bylaws as a
Hmm.
nonprofit reflect how
Hmm.
the nonprofit is run. You got them for a reason. Why are you over here doing this when the bylaws say you should be over there doing that?
Exactly. It's your Bible of the nonprofit world. The bylaws should be treated like your Bible in the organization.
So I got a question about the bylaws. Do you have to file them with someone? Do like IRS, or you just keep them in your office, or what happens with the bylaws? Where do they go?
Yes, they get filed to IRS. IRS wants everything when you first start in that application. Yeah, they don't miss anything. And even when you do amendments, you have to submit your amendments as well.
Okay, so that's part of being compliant
Hmm.
because you're operating. Say you do amend your bylaws, and IRS say has something totally different, then you're no longer in compliance.
Hmm. Technically.
Good to know. Another thing that you need to be in compliance with and have some requirements is what happens when you transition. A lot of people don't have an exit strategy. In the event you want to sell, you want to retire, or you just want to disband your business or your nonprofit, how does that look? And so you need to be able to have a written transition document on how it's going to look when it's time to go. Because at some point we're all going to be leaving where we're sitting right
Hmm.
now. So does
Yes.
nonprofits have the same type of transitional document?
Yes, Sharon. They most time refer to as having a successor plan in place. And that's like you said, whether someone passes or they just decide to move out of that role,
Hmm.
either way, having a successor plan in place.
Thank you, Yvonne. Let's talk about, so that was some of the internal ones. Now we have the state and federal, and those I think are a little more outline than the internal, because the internal we make ourselves to keep us, on the straight and narrow. But
Mhm.
the state and federal, some of those are mandatory with timelines, with fees, and you need to know when they're due, how
Mhm.
much it is, and what goes into it. And for example, in the district, we used to get an alert when it was time to do your basic business license. Every 2 years you file, you pay. They stopped mailing out reminders. I guess they figure this is your business, you need to have it on the calendar.
Right.
So a lot of people, some people, have missed that deadline and have to start all over and pay those fees all over again. So with a nonprofit, uh, is it similar in terms of dealing with the state and federal government and staying compliant?
Yes, Sharon. And I would add that for the federal, pretty much the same things are required. of a nonprofit, maybe a different form of a different name, but you're going to still have to file. But when it comes to each state, I just want to remind people, probably whether you're doing nonprofit or for profit, you have to make sure you understand who you have to register with. So nonprofits also have to be registered with the state. And even if you're doing service in some states, you have to make sure that you're registered with the state, sometimes with the county. You know, you have to have a license from the county. And even if you move, and even when we were talking about doing for nonprofits receiving contributions, there are, you have to get approval from USDA in order to be able to solicit. But then you also really are supposed to go by each state to make sure that you are approved to solicit in that state. I think sometimes we get a nonprofit started and you just focusing on that one area, but not if that's where the money coming from. Everybody want to know who's
Oh,
giving.
I see what you're saying, because if my nonprofit is registered in DC, now I'm going off to California to get some money. California wants their cut too.
Yeah.
So that does make sense. And so it's better to be aware in the beginning than for them to catch up with you later and put you on the hook for a bill. And the same thing with taxes. And you need to make sure you file every year, get you a CPA that is knowledgeable in nonprofit, in profits, where you getting your money from, where you're registered. All of those things are important to running a business.
Yeah, Sean, I just want to add to remind people, when you starting a business, although when we're starting, you may feel like, oh, well, I only have a couple of things, it's small, not much money generating either way. But the best practice is to start as if you already have it. Start it the right way so that as you grow, all you have to do is make those minor adjustments. Because going back, trying to figure it out, and that is not the vibe that you want to have to deal with.
Lord, don't I know it?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, ask me how I know.
Ask me, because I just
Right.
helped somebody the other day redo every single thing from scratch to include re-registering their name. You do not.
Mm-mm.
And the fees are not going down. They are going up exponentially, and you can get fined daily. It's $1,000 a day in DC if you are found to be non-compliant. So you can shut your door,
pretty much,
which is money out of your pocket as well. So we're going to stay legally compliant. And if you need some assistance, you need to get a CPA. I highly recommend you have someone to help you to stay compliant. Because once you do it, it's just a matter of renewing, knowing when the deadlines are, knowing what the fees are, and just doing it. And like you said, Yvonne, even if you feel that you're small now, you're gonna start adding them zeros at the end.
Right.
So you wanna get in the habit of doing things the right way. So thank you so much, Yvonne, for joining me this morning for the managed portion of our business, where we talked about staying legally compliant. And guess what, Yvonne?
Yep. Guess
Go to
what?
our YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Today.
Bye.
Bye.
Like, share, and subscribe.